Good evening, good evening. So we have heard some wonderful information thus far about wealth and about money. I want to take us in a little different direction and talk about how health is wealth. So I know that Dr. Fraser would affirm that our words matter and our words have power. So as we entered into 2020 and the pandemic, there was one word that I consistently heard, and I was consistently speaking: unprecedented. Unprecedented. And as we sit in 2022, there are two words that I'm consistently hearing and consistently speaking: reset and resilience. Reset and resilience. So as I thought about those two words, I realized I know a little something about reset and resilience. But I'm a firm believer that in order to share where we are today, we have to share from where we've come. So I'm going to take you back to September 10th, 2001. September 10th, 2001, that's not a mistake. I flew from Chicago O'Hare Airport to LaGuardia Airport to attend a meeting in New York City, a one-day meeting. I remember I had a small suitcase with me because I was there for one day. But we all know what occurred that next morning was September 11th. And so I awakened that next morning, and no one really knew what happened. They thought a crop duster had gone into the World Trade Center. So I checked out of my hotel because I thought I was going to my one-day meeting. However, as I walked down Fifth Avenue towards Lower Manhattan, I heard yells, I heard groans. Everyone was standing on the corners at the banks of the televisions, seeing everything that was going on. And at that time, we realized it was not a crop duster. So lost all communication, no way to communicate with anyone. I didn't have a cell phone, no way to connect with anyone. And I remember my father, bless his soul, he said he was in Indianapolis and he was on his treadmill at the Y. And he was watching all of this on television. And he was like, oh no, this is horrible, this is horrible. And then he said, wait a minute, my baby's in New York. But again, I had no way to communicate with my family. The only thing that I could do was get to the consulting firm. Where was the consulting firm? Towards Lower Manhattan. So I remember walking with this single suitcase in that direction and a police officer stopping me. He said, ma'am, where are you going? And I told him I just needed to get to the office. So I finally got there after going through security. I went up the elevator. I stepped into the conference room facing the World Trade Center, and the first tower fell. That was a life-changing experience. Reset. So rather than one day being in New York City, I spent 9 days there, actually sitting on my girlfriend's couch in Brooklyn, looking across the Hudson River and looking at all the smoke and everything that was going on. And I remember my assistant kept trying to get me on another plane, and I'm like, I am not getting on a plane. I am not getting on a plane. But you know, it ended up that I ended up taking the last rental car from LaGuardia. And I drove from New York City back to Chicago. My parents met me in Pittsburgh. Reset. So after that point, like many consulting firms around the world, many went through their downsizing. And so I made it through the first 2 rounds of that downsizing. But right before the 3rd round, someone put this book in my mailbox called Who Moved My Cheese? Now that book is a little old, somebody knows that book, but apparently my cheese was about to be moved because in that 3rd round, I was released from the consulting firm. Reset. But what did I do? I tapped into my inner resilience. I had an undergraduate degree from Northwestern University, an MBA from the University of Michigan. I started my own consulting firm. The entrepreneur in me came out. So I started my own consulting firm, started doing my own work, but then I also had a goal to be an executive director for a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping transform urban education. I raised my nephew and I saw how Black and brown boys were treated in education. So as is my character, I set that goal and I achieved it. And I worked, And I worked, and I worked. I worked my business, and I worked that job. So now I'm going to take you to 2005. I sat in my doctor's office at Northwestern University Hospital in Chicago, and I had my doctor say to me words I thought I would never hear. After weeks and weeks of testing and undiagnosed issues and blood work and MRIs, my doctor said to me, April, I truly believe that your work is having a detrimental impact on your life. So she said, you have two choices. You can either find something else to do or manage significant health issues for the rest of your life. I was 35. So at the age of 35, my doctor was telling me I was working myself in the ground. And I know what you're saying, wow, she doesn't look that old. But the only thing I can say is I have a beautiful 74-year-old mother, and we know that black don't crack. So that's one good thing about my health. But my doctor was sending me a message. But I was one of God's hard-headed children at that time. I stayed in that job for another 2 years. And I worked, and I worked, and I worked my business and that job. And I ended up taking a health sabbatical at some point. I remember my VP came in from New York, and he said to me, you know what, April, we truly appreciate everything that you have done for our organization. He said, but the reality is, if God forbid you die tomorrow, we are going to come to your funeral, we are going to cry, and we're going to post for your position. Reset. The recognition that we can work and work and work, and we can earn all of the wealth, but if we're not here to enjoy it, what's the point? What's the point? And so that's why it is the recognition that health is wealth. And if we don't focus on our mind, our body, our physical health, and not sacrificing ourselves, not only for work, but for everyone else, we won't be here to enjoy it. So I have one final reset that really transformed my entire life. And so I'll take you to 2011. Actually, I'll take you to 2014. I sat in the sanctuary at my church, and my pastor said, anyone in here ever go through a situation where you thought you did everything right? You got your education, you got your career, you were progressing in the direction you thought you should go, and then all of a sudden you lost your health, you lost your house, you lost your car, and you lost your business? He said, that's called a divine storm. That is when God steps into your life to transform, reveal, and heal you and bring you closer to Him and guide you towards a pathway of purpose. So as I sat in that sanctuary, I wanted to raise my hand because that is exactly what happened to me. After everything that I worked and worked and worked for 20 years, it was all gone in a matter of months. In a matter of months. And I did go from 6 figures, food stamps for the first time in my life, but to millions in the name of Jesus in the right way. But everything shifted for me. And what I did not realize is that God was opening the door for a transformative experience that to this day, sometimes I still can't even describe. And it is indescribable and something I would not trade for $1 billion. But when I didn't have $50 and something to eat, I would have traded it for $50. But in thinking about all of those resets and tapping into my inner resilience and all those things that I went through, it was my pathway to purpose. It was my pathway to purpose. I knew I was to be an author, an orator, a speaker, an encourager, a coach in the 3rd grade. I knew that in the 3rd grade, but what was I chasing? Wealth, money, status, title. And that's the direction that it took me to work myself to the place of burnout. But it was at the age of 48, in 2018, I published my first book, The Burnout Factor on Education, 7 Strategies to Sustain Your Leadership in Your Life. In 2020, published the #1 Amazon bestseller, The Burnout Factor on Leadership, Managing Burnout in a Time of Unprecedented Change, about burnout and the pandemic and the implications that we are dealing with and the implications we are going to be dealing with for years going forward. And then last year, I published my latest book, A Divine Storm, My Journey of Losing It All for the Restoration of My Soul. So what I recognize with all of those shifts, and sometimes when I tell my story, people are like, my Lord, what did you go through? Yes, it was a lot, but it was my pathway to purpose. because I would not be here speaking to you about this had I not gone through my journey. And Dr. Fraser teaches us we are to utilize our experiences for the benefit of others. And so when we think about wealth and all of the things and the financial strategies, it is the recognition that if we do not do it in a healthy, balanced way, we will not be here to sustain everything that we are looking to leave a legacy for. So that is why I focus on hitting the reset button, the power of resilience. I'm fortunate to work with all kinds of clients. Every time I say I work with executive women battling burnout, my male clients go, well, what about us? I've had wonderful male clients as well. But there's a specific focus. We know as women, we will sacrifice and give more than anyone else to our detriment. And so that's why I'm committed to do the work that I do, and I look forward to those who want to come and hear more about my journey and my experience. I believe I'm in room 327. Okay, thank you. But just the recognition that health is wealth. And so yes, we want to achieve, and that's why I tell my clients, I believe in success. And I didn't share with you all, when I was going through that journey and that experience, I was 100 pounds heavier than I am today. I was on 7 different medications a day at 35. But that's what can happen when you get out of balance and you get into that place of burnout. So it's my mission to use my life journey as a testament to know you can achieve great success, but you have to do it in a healthy, balanced way. So that's what I teach my clients. That's what I'll be talking about this evening, and I look forward to you joining me. Thank you.